Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the very thorough introduction. Yeah, so I'm gonna provide peering perspectives, something about interconnection, something related really to improving internet connectivity and access. Yeah. In the presentation, it's really more of how we do peering, the challenges we have in the Philippines, and with a touch of how the wireless network comes into play. Peering is an essential part of the internet ecosystem. So though there are a lot of acceptable best practices, tricks and tips, there are different considerations that we need to check as well. This presentation provides insights and perspectives influencing peering engagement in the Philippines, which may be applicable in other economies as well. In addition, I will try to show a brief intro on where the wireless connectivity comes into play. So again, this is the general slide. So we've gone through here. I'm from Globe Telecom. I'm also part of ISO and also chairing PageNog and most recently the APNIC EC. For this session, I will wear multiple hats. That is why I have these different perspectives. And a quick disclaimer. So the information in this presentation are perspective based on my experiences and exposure in the internet community and does not really reflect the opinion of any of my company of affiliation I'm connected with. So let's start. Yeah. So to begin with, assuming we have other delegates attendees here, just a quick info about Philippines. This is Philippines in numbers. Yeah, Philippines is obviously an archipelago. So we have 7,641 islands. That's during high tide. I think low tide you have more. That was a previous before. 2,000 of that is inhabited, around 26%, and we have three major island groups. Latest population is 113 million, and our capital is Manila. From the infrastructure part, so this is what we're talking about in the later slides. We have 16 international submarine cable systems. So these are the subsea cables that interconnect the internet, other networks, other countries as one. These are the physically laid fiber under the sea, on the seabed. And then we have 660 autonomous system numbers. These are the unique IDs that you need to connect to have an interconnection or peering. Yeah, this is unique per network, similar to a mobile number that is most likely unique to a specific person. When we talk internet, the ASN is the unique identity. Then we have 9 international cable stations. This is where the submarine cable systems actually connect. There's one ongoing. Then we have 10 local internet exchange points. And then lastly, we have 12 data centers where everything infrastructure-wise is hosted. Yeah, more details on that on the next slide. Okay, so let's start with a diagram. Yeah, so this represents a typical, point A to point B connectivity. Yeah, I just noted there site N on the right side, which can represent different setups or multiple sites. That's why it's called site N. And then we can just add, delete specific sections depending on the specific setup. So from the left side, please take note of the acronym. So EU is the end user, which is us or a device or an equipment that has an IP address. Then to physically connect that, you need the last mile. Now, this can be copper, fiber, wireless, coax, depending on your specific area. If it's a mountainous area, then probably you go to wireless. If it's pretty flat land, then most likely you go to fiber or copper. Then the DC is the data center. That's where you actually physically host everything, the routers, the other equipments. It's most likely the main termination point. And then the DC normally connects to a DLL. DLL is a domestic local loop that connects you to the CLS, which is the cable landing station. This is where physical subsea cables come in. And then going out of a specific country or region, we have IPL. That's the International Private Line or subsea cable. Then you notice there is a dotted line in the middle, which actually, if you fold it in half, will be a mirror image of the other network that you will be interconnecting. So let's say site A is Philippines, and then another site will be like US. So you just fold it in half. You will have the same setup going to the other side. Now, this can be replicated depending on the requirement, depending on diversity, or depending on the need to reach specific users, specific networks. From the perspective of Philippines, normally our other half goes to Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, some in Taiwan or Malaysia, and then the rest goes to the US and Europe. That's mainly dependent on what type of traffic or what type of content or what type of infrastructure did we partner with or have in terms of the user behavior in our country. Okay. Now, from interconnection perspective, we go to the different layers of interconnection. So again, this is a typical setup, but more or less reference this to mobile access, so we can have the wireless component. So we start from the top. We have BR, which is referenced as a border router. That's where you have your international internet gateway, and then it goes next to the DR, distribution router. That is your local gateway. And then to the AR, access network, and then to the eyeball. Eyeball is the user. Normally, your core infrastructure, which covers the BR and DR, are wired. And then as you go along to the users, to the edges, it's a combination of wired and wireless, but this for this example is mobile. So we have the wireless infrastructure there. We have like the BTS or in-building facility, etc., etc. Yeah. So for that interconnection, we have a combination of wired and wireless. But from a peering perspective, that covers everything. Although normally the peering physically is done either in the BR or the DR level, it actually encompasses everything, as all paths must be optimal to ensure improved access. So that this is where like latency comes in, capacity, big pipes, free of congestion, etc., etc. So all the way up to the user level, everything should be optimal, so we can be sure of a good service or better service, because we try to improve them every time. Okay. Now we go to specifically to the peering part. So what is actually peering? Essentially, it's network to network interconnection. So from a human behavioral perspective, so it's like talking to someone, then you have an agreement, then you exchange ideas, you converse. So from a network perspective, you physically interconnect, connect the ports, regardless of what size, then you exchange internet traffic. The common question here is always, is it free or settlement free? Those are two very, very different things. The common misunderstanding that it is free, but if you actually maintain infrastructure or a network, you have costs, and each party actually covers its own costs. So to put it in perspective, it is not free, but it is settlement free, because you manage your own infra, you manage your own traffic, you exchange ideally the same amount of traffic to make it beneficial for both parties. So that's what you call settlement free. And then is it bilateral? So normally bilateral covers the amount of traffic. So if it's bilateral, ideally you should have more or less the same amount of traffic going in and going out from you to the other party, or the other party to you. It should be symmetric. That is the ideal scenario, but everything can be done depending on how you converse your discussion. And then, does it need to be documented, or should there be any formalities? From the peering community or internet community, basically it's just a handshake, handshake, or a gentleman or a ladies agreement to make it neutral. So, conceptually, this is based on trust. That's why it is very, very important to keep your word, because this is a small community. Everybody knows what's happening, although they don't actually talk about it. Everyone will know, and if you do something that negates what you initially committed, then you might have a problem with your future transactions. So this is a handshake. To some extent, if it's very formal, it will have a very simple agreement, and it can be patterned from existing agreements, or you can make your own as long as both parties agree. And then the speeding has what we call an SLA, or service level agreement, or is it just like best effort? This is a very tricky question, and normally resides between the discussion on the two networks that want to interconnect. At the end of the day, it's about what you want to achieve in your network or service. You can sort to some level of SLA or just best effort, but you have to put in mind that this is your traffic. So each party monitors its traffic and the behavior. If something bad is happening to your network, then definitely you want to do something about it. That echoes as well to the other side, the side of your partner. Then that's the time you actually talk about it and try to sort out the things. At the end of the day, you will exert more or less whatever effort you need to ensure that everything is okay, because nobody wants to provide bad service in the first place. Now, all of this actually depends, or can be influenced by negotiations based on the need, based on the requirement, etc., etc. So first step actually to do when you want to establish peering is to make sure who you want to peer with. Make sure you have those details, make sure you profiled your traffic, and you more or less have an idea. If you don't, then there is a community. You can always ask for help. One thing I learned here when I was initially new, I thought this is very a personal thing, so you have to learn on your own, try to study, but no, there is a big community out there, and they are very much willing to help you if you need anything. In this peering ecosystem that we have, almost everything can be arranged, and it's always an open discussion. The key thing here is to be visible, and that is you need to participate in probably all, or if not key internet engagement, where you need to be identified which network you're handling, and there's supposed to be a person managing that. So for that one, I will talk about that in the later slide. Okay, next. And after figuring out what is peering, then what is it for? Normally, peering is always associated with costs or revenue, because in our environment today, those are probably the two major things that can be measured. So will peering improve user experience, or lower the cost, or increase revenue, etc., etc. So the question here is, you have to define everything, like improve user experience. What experience? If you're actually coming from, let's use an example, a dial-up service, then something faster than dial-up would probably definitely be a great improvement. So from an experience perspective, then this actually can be like twice or three times or even 100% improvement. So you have to more or less define that. Though one thing very crucial is the influence part in terms of improvement. So you need to identify what you actually need to improve. Is it service experience? Is it cost? Is it revenue? Holistically, peering can contribute to everything, but you have to weigh what is more important to you. For example, on the top part, that's the dollar sign going down. That's probably costs going down. Yes, you can reduce your costs, because when you peer, let's say it's normally settlement free, so you don't pay for that service. But if you need to have that interconnection somewhere else, let's say in Hong Kong, then you need to make sure you are in Hong Kong. You probably will have additional costs to build your infrastructure all the way to Hong Kong. Then you weigh now your costs to build that versus the savings you actually achieve for peering. So this is a very simple mathematics, so you can actually sort that out. And then from an experience perspective, based on experience, is when the service is optimal, people or users tend to use the connectivity more often. So when you use the connectivity more often from a service provider monitoring, then the traffic increases. When traffic increases, then that may mean additional revenue for them. So if it means additional revenue for them, then that's actually a good number. It may even justify the need for additional peering because that actually satisfies the main goal to have better customer experience. So all of this can be done. It can be a balancing act, and you need to know your priorities for that. Again, it depends on what you want to achieve or what is your target, or it can be point in time, situational, but again, you need to define what you need to accomplish. And then another example is peering can question mark. So this one normally for the network guys, if you see full utilization or something red, depending on your monitoring. So this, by the way, the diagram shows links. Normally red means almost full or getting full. And then on the right part is actually a graph. It borderlines to the top, which means your utilization is full. From a traffic utilization perspective, this may mean a negative outcome. So if you want to make sure you have a good service, then utilization can be should be low because it can impact actually or cause service degradation. But it can also mean something even worse for the actual person, monitoring this. It can mean that they're not doing their job, and which is actually not a good, not a good situation they're going to be. However, this can be a sweet spot as well. How? Sometimes, especially here in Philippines, we need an actual use case for justification. The pandemic made that point because there were lots of link, that went high, good utilization or very high utilization, which justifies the actual need to upgrade. It's a sad scenario to be in because you need to have proof to ensure that you need to get an upgrade or something similar to do, so you can improve the service. But it's a silver lining. Basically, we maximize what we can use in terms of justifying what we need to do, and most often we have to go through this exercise to prove a point. Not really a good example, but it's the idea, and it normally happens, and let's maximize on that. Simply put, the high utilization based on this example normally merits capacity upgrade. But one thing to learn here is we need to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So your narrative in terms of justification should be good the next time. So you don't end up to a point that you need to show a full traffic on your link to merit a justification to upgrade. And then peering is also economics. So let's put the previous considerations and come together. Yeah. So peering is economics. Well, the initiative aims for more or less financial optimization. There are other factors that seemingly makes it more costly. So first, establishing peering, there must be a physical interconnection. So normally it's always physical interconnection. XC IP, ASN, those green items in the other weighing scale that brings it down are something we need to consider. Let's start with XC. XC is actually cross-connect that is normally happening in the data center. That's your physical interconnection, port-to-port, equipment to equipment. And the cost of cross-connect in the Philippines is ridiculously expensive. Sometimes cross-connect or domestic link costs is more expensive than the international links. That's why those are the things we normally talk about in the NOG, the discussion. So that's something we try to collaborate and bring up so we can address that. The location also plays an important part as well, as this can include, what mentioned earlier, the local loop, the IPL, depending on where you interconnect. So that adds up to the cost. Let's say you want to interconnect in Cebu, you are in Manila, then definitely you'll need to haul your physical infrastructure from Manila to Cebu. If you have something in Cebu, then it's easy for you. It's just like a cross connect in a data center. But if not, you probably need to order a link from another ISP or a local loop provider, and then you will need to add that cost in your consideration. So let's say the cross connect becomes accessible. To pursue a peering engagement or a peering session, you will need your IP and ASN. IP is IP address. These are unique numbers assigned to a specific network. And then the ASN is your unique ID. So these two are the most basic requirements to establish peering. You can have everything in place. The one mentioned here, XC, colocation, local loop, manpower, and everything. But if you don't have the interconnect information, which is your own IP address or the AS number, then nothing will happen. For some network, they don't have these resources, and this will be additional expense for them. So that's why it's in the expense part. So that weighs them down in terms of consideration. Knowledge also plays a key role here. It's good to find out what your requirements are. If you're really into peering, or you can just subscribe to a normal internet service and let your ISP do the peering for you. But if you want to manage your network more efficiently, if you have that volume, if you want that flexibility, then you will need to get these two resources. So if the IP and the ASN is okay, as well as the cross connect, then that will be acceptable to you. You will then need to deal with other considerations as well. Let's start with like manpower there. So that's the skills part. You need to have someone to manage that. So traditionally here in Philippines, we have a lot of network engineers, but we also need to have IP engineers. IP is totally different from network. IP is routing, which is a different skill set that we need to consider. So now the operator needs to ensure they have an equipped personnel to manage the network. Sometimes you can train or you hire. It will now depend on how economical you want it to be, or it can be more or less from your company. Then he just needs to study up. Again, I would like to point that it is a community, so they can ask anytime they need help. And everything's actually on the internet. You can probably just Google them. And then if you have those, you need to find a place to position your equipment. It can be a data center or co-location. So that will be additional cost as well. And for that one, this can be a monthly cost. It can be an annual cost. And then collectively, you have to add those up and weigh your options. So what will be more important for the operator, for the network? Is it good for them, or is it something that is okay to outsource? From a business perspective, initially they do away with this consideration and just let their ISP do their the peering part. But as they get bigger and want to be flexible and really want to manage their own infra, then that's the time they actually go to this specific components of the internet so they can establish peering. Is the question now if it's economical for you, but at the end of the day, it's what you want to achieve, as what I mentioned earlier. Then next, peering is also geometry. Yeah. So you got the interconnection, we got IP resources, we got the manpower and everything. So we have established that, but there are other things that needs to be considered as well. The next step is to set it up. So this slide shows a equilateral triangle. So it has equal sides, equal angle, corresponding to equally important considerations. Yeah. So there are three very crucial considerations that are the physical, policy, and config. So physical is your physical interconnection. So you have to connect your ports. Where and how will depend on your location. And then also you need to configure, of course. The common hurdle here in Philippines is they always stop at the physical part. That's quite something I can't understand, because if you go to the physical part, you're already interconnected, but you don't configure it, you don't do your policies, then there will be no traffic exchange. So why go all the trouble to set up if it will not work in the first place? So the knowledge actually plays an important part there as well. They need to know how to do this end to end. Based on experience, sadly, it's always the physical part where the peering begins and ends. It's really now becoming more of a compliance thing, but we can do better than that. We have the big community here that can help us again. Yeah. So we have the physical done, and then you do your config. For the config, it's very straightforward. At this time, we need to include version 4 and version 6 of IP address, and then you announce your prefixes and accept theirs. And after the configuration, you will more or less have the interconnection up. Then the last consideration would be the policy. For the policy part, this is where you start to manage the setup. Ideally, for peering is you announce everything, because that's what you want to do to exchange traffic between the network you actually peer with. But again, this is always dependent on the discussion. There are some interconnect policies that you don't do that, but from a diversity or redundancy perspective, you may need to consider it. In case your initial link or your primary link goes down, then the secondary link or the second peer can actually take the traffic. So you need to sort that out and plan that out as you go along. There are cases also that policies, change from time to time, but ideally it should benefit both networks. So the good thing here is there should be very good communication between the networks you actually peer. You need to have a specific, contact person to engage with, so you can address this. Commonly, it's termed as you extend the best effort to make sure this work. Although we normally don't have a contract for peering, but again, it's your service that's gonna suffer. It's your users that's gonna fail the service application. Then you want that to happen. It will also be a bad reflection on your service anyway, so you need to sort out. Both networks should have agreed in the first place. So we have more or less a demarcation of a list of what each party needs to do and not. And if you need to help each other, then you can sort that out. Then if you actually don't have that on day one, then you can do it as you go along. It's always good to have open communication, and sometimes the good of communication is key, because it's not a perfect network. There's no such thing. There are times that there are outages or something unintentionally goes wrong. So these are the things we need to communicate with each other, because something that you actually did may not or may impact the other party. That's why it's good to let them know. At the same time, they will also do a similar thing if it happens on their end. And then after the cost setup, we did the collateral considerations. Now we go to the moving forward part. Peering is also physics. This is actually my favorite part. Okay, so for this one, I will need your imagination. Yeah, so this is a box at rest. When it's at rest, basically there are forces that's coming below, on top, on the left or the right to put it at rest. But we need to move forward, so we need to go and break the state of equilibrium. So let's say this is the state of the peering initiative. So if there's no initiative, then nothing will happen. So we will really need to extend the effort. So I tried to do some kind of animation here. So if you need to push, then you push. Greater force for pushing, greater push force to contradict the friction, and then the box will move. For this case, the box is the peering engagement, and we need to go beyond that slip point. Holistically, for Philippines per se, I think I'm happy to say that we are already beyond the slip point. Historically, people are not talking to each other, or there's no actual movement. It's really more of compliance. But now we have like chat groups. We meet each other. There are events that we co-represent each other. And there are a lot of engagement where we can actually interconnect. It has improved, but there's always something to improve. So this is an endless journey. So everyone is invited to help. Step one is almost difficult to almost impossible, but nothing is impossible. There's always a way. In the local term, may paraan, gagawa natin ng paraan palagi. That's why there always needs to be a champion to push this forward. Okay, and lastly, peering is sociology. Probably this is one of the most important part of peering, is to establish the people network. And the people network includes you, because everybody is part of the internet. This is where the champion comes in. Normally for peering, we have what we call the peering manager, the peering coordinator, but it actually evolves to different names. But basically, what they do is to set up the interconnection and everything, and ensure everything is smooth and end to end. The peering manager plays a very essential role, as they are key in establishing the initial contact. So the challenge here is you need to know who to contact. That's why globally there's what we call a peering database, where all the contacts, every network is there. It's a common and public site where all interconnect information are listed. So that's one of the important things that needs to be done. Another challenge here in Philippines is the peering manager role is actually non-existent. So there's no such role or accepted function in most organizations. It can be a side job, a side function, but it's not an official role. But that did not stop us from doing the job right. Yeah, like from my end, I established that role and scope to make sure that the interconnect environment and ecosystem in the company is good, and echoed that to all other networks if possible. The community, complements this and provides an avenue for interaction. The main community that we have is the NOG, which is a network operators group. So in Philippines, we have PHNOG. So each country has that. For us, it's PHNOG. For Hong Kong, it's HKNOG, Singapore, SGNOG, and so on and so forth. So that actually creates a good ambiance and neutral ground to make things work. So it's now being a sought after event for interconnection and peering. NOGs are very much key to this, which we have been doing for quite a while. That's sharing, learning, and collaborating. So it's a nonstop thing. And to cap this presentation, summing it all up, it will be conscience. Yeah, it is our our responsibility as a member of the internet community to do our part in making the internet better, regardless of the role, whether big or small, because everybody's part of the internet. There's really no best, but there's always better as requirements change, and your new users never get satisfied. You never get satisfied. You always want more, and from the peering community or the peering managers, this is an endless but fun job. But together we can make a better internet. You are the internet, we are the internet. So everybody, let's get our hands dirty so we actually have a homework. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.